Namandauts, 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 namandauts. Namandauts.
Good morning, everyone. We will begin today's service with meditation followed by Nembutsu. Please join me by placing your palms together in Gasho.
Namu Amida Butsu.
Namo Amida Butsu.
Namu Amida Butsu.
Namo Amida Butsu.
Namu Amida Butsu.
Namo Amida Butsu.
Namandauts, 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 namandauts.
Good morning, everyone, again, and welcome to our annual Hanamatsuri service. My name is Sachi Yanakita, and I'm your service chair for today's Hanamatsuri service. I'd like to welcome our guest speaker, Reverend Matt Hamazaki, and his wife, Michelle, daughter, Aya, and son, Taizo, and who will be giving the adult Dharma message today. Today, we celebrate the birth of Prince Siddhartha Gautama, who became the enlightened Shakyamuni Buddha. I will leave the details of Shakyamuni's journey to our expert ministers for their Dharma message. But I'd like to share why Hanamatsuri is my favorite service. I always look forward to seeing the beautiful Hanamido, created by Kimi Ishihara's talented group of artists. Every year, they painstakingly gather flowers to create this beautiful shrine for all of us to enjoy. And this year, we are grateful to Mike Shibata and his talented artists for decorating today's Hanamido. I read on an online article yesterday about Hanamatsuri, and gratefulness is mentioned many times to those in our lives who bring us joy. So Mike, and those who continue the task of decorating the Hanamido each year, thank you. We truly are grateful to you for creating so many beautiful memories for us. And I want to thank the Hasagawa family for donating some of the flowers that are on the arrangements today as well. So, let's see. Reverend Shibata will now chant Kambutsuge, which is called the Gatha on bathing the Buddha image. This will be followed by the aspiration and dedication of today's service.
Sentient beings of the five periods of the state to be separated from their sufferings, and together attain the pure Dharma body of the Tathagatas. We are fortunate to be here in this world where birth is difficult. We are even more fortunate to be able to meet the vow of immeasurable life and light that transforms us to become truly human. On this Buddha Day, rejoice in the birth of Siddhartha Gautama, who had later become the Buddha, the fully awakened one. Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo
Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo
Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo
Namo.
Please rise if you are able to for the singing of the Gatha in Lubini's garden, which will be led by the choir. The Gatha can be found in the program or in the service book on page 177. This will be followed by the recitation of Three Treasures, which is also in the program on page 2 of the service book.
Three treasures. Hard is it to be born into human life. Now we are living it. Difficult is it to hear the teachings of the Blessed One. Now we hear it. If we do not deliver ourselves in the present life, no hope is there that we shall be freed from suffering and sorrow in the ocean of birth and death. Let us reverently take refuge in the three treasures of the truth. I take refuge in Buddha. May we all together absorb into ourselves the principle of your way to enlightenment and awaken in ourselves your supreme will. I take refuge in Dharma. May we all together be submerged in the depth of the doctrine and gain wisdom as deep as the ocean. I take refuge in Sangha. May we all together become units in true accord in your life of harmony, in a spirit of universal oneness, freed from the bondage of selfishness, even through ages of myriads of kalpas. Hard is it to hear such an excellent, profound, and wonderful doctrine. Now we are able to hear and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of Tathagata's teaching. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandavats, 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 namandavats.
We will continue with the chanting of Sambuk Butsuge, which starts on page 83 in the service book.
Ko gengi gim 者日月間に主公園よ開室音平有略樹木如来予言調整無輪小学大音古流寺法開門精進三昧智慧意徳無量主生慶無人体前年小仏崩壊苦人人の苦語外大無明欲ぬ世尊読む二の死死人徳無量苦訓古代知恵寿命光明一層神道大戦願が差仏在所可動生じ未不下脱不正上位解任精進如税三昧知恵以上公正特仏不行志願一切空空一切大安決し無仏百千億万無量大小修行語者供養一切死と小仏不尿具道検証不逆非尿語者小仏正解不不可減無種節道光明師匠変死小国如税精進異人難量量が差仏国土第一公衆奇妙道場調節国内音任務とそがとわいみんと脱一切実法大小心熱症状人が国気楽安穏古仏神妙世が心象法 発願の日力少所欲自法生存知恵無限浄土子孫知が信行けど心身食読中家業精進忍術福建ナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブがんにしくどく平等正祭東本菩提一心往生安楽ナマンダブツナマンダブツナマンダブツナマンダブツナマンダブツナマンダブツナマンダブ
Okay. Now we will have offering of the tea by the following representatives. Dharma School student Jules Beth. Dharma School teacher Mike Shibata. And do we have a representative from the Sangha Club? Nope. Okay. Young Buddhist Association, Emily Wong. Young Adult Buddhist Association, Dr. Linda Kawaguchi. Youth Athletic Organization, Derek Uemura. Do we have a representative from the... Thank you, Dr. Alan Kawaguchi. Adult Buddhist Association, Dolores Matsumura. Tomonokai, Wayne Morisaki. Do we have a representative for Tomonokai? Thank you, Motoe. Stockton Bukyo Taiko, Chris Kubo. Thank you. Stockton Buddhist Women's Association, Bev Hota. Cortez Hoakai, Ann Osugi. Buddhist Church of Stockton, Debbie Nakade. Thank you. Now we will have a Dharma message. Reverend Shibata will introduce our guest speaker, Reverend Matt Hamasaki.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And it's really my pleasure and an honor to introduce our guest speaker today. And I believe this is our first time that we've had Reverend Hamasaki join us. And I'm glad that he was able to do so because Sacramento Buddhist Church is actually celebrating their Hanamatsuri too. So thank you, Sensei, for taking time out of your busy schedule. And if you don't know Reverend Hamasaki yet, he grew up in Berkeley, California, where he attended the Berkeley Buddhist Temple, which was my very first assignment, and his interests in Dharma began there, nurtured by the Dharma school teachers, deepening during his high school years when he was active in the Junior Young Buddhist Association. And after graduating, he received his Bachelor of Arts in Religious Studies from the University of California, Davis. And he went on to receive his Master's in Buddhism from the Institute of Buddhist Studies. And he was first assigned to the Central California District and then transferred to Sacramento Betsuin, where he's currently the resident minister as well as the supervising minister for the Pastor Buddhist Church. And actually, Sensei and I, we we started our whole career together. We didn't know each other at all, and met when we went to orientation at the Institute of Buddhist Studies. We went to IBS together. We resided at the dorm together, and had a lot of fun, which I can't mention right now in front of the children, but we had a lot of fun as dorm mates, of course, with our other colleagues and friends who went to the Institute of Buddhist Studies as well. And we pretty much graduated, lived in Japan for a year at the same dorm as well when we were Ryukoku students. Received our ordinations at the same time and began our ministry at the same time as well. And so Reverend Matt has been a true friend in the Dharma. And I do want to share this one particular story that always touches my heart, actually too, during our ordinations. So during my Tokudo, my very first ordination, I was just having brain farts completely, couldn't remember things, and I was losing my track of even Shoshinge, chanting Shoshinge, but there's a Ryogemon, which is an oath that we have to do, and there's particular tests that we have to pass to be able to become ministers. And I just was having a blank, and actually started to cry because I was just so embarrassed and so nervous. And so as I was trying to recite the Ryogemon, I felt this shoulder coming up against my shoulder, and it was Reverend Matt who was quietly giving his support to me while I was getting through Ryogemon. And so he's been, again, a true supporter of my ministry. And the second time we went to ordination together is for our Kyoshi certification, and I happened to have a very severe nut allergy, and actually ate something that had almond extract, and I didn't know. And I was having a reaction, and as I was getting prepared to go to the hospital, I started to cry because I started getting nervous. And then here Reverend Matt was again, so that I can lean my head into his chest as I was crying because I was so nervous. So thank you, Reverend Matt, for being a dear friend and colleague and friend in the Dharma. And we're just so happy and honored to have you finally join us here in Stockton. And of course, your wonderful family as well. So without further ado, Sensei, yoroshiku onegai shimasu. Oh my God. You're so self.
Thank you, Reverend Candace, for that wonderful introduction. Yeah, I don't really feel so young anymore. A lot of people tell me I'm still young, but after having 2 kids, I'm getting a lot of grays. But when I had started, I kind of did it, I suppose unorthodox, in that most ministers, at least from America, start a career first and they become ministers later in life. So I was kind of rare in that I came straight out of college. I knew what I wanted to do, and so I went in. So I was very young. So I was very lucky to have Reverend Candace there as kind of like, dorm mother, like other, or maybe dorm big sister. Yeah. So I'm very grateful for Reverend Candace as well. Okay, I was told I have 5 minutes for the kids. So I won't get too much into the actual history of the birth of the Buddha. I'll tell the story for the adults, because the adults can hear it, because I have longer to talk and I have to take up the time. Anyway, so does everyone know what we're pouring on the statue of the baby Buddha today? Oh, okay, very good. Yes. Sure. Tea. Is it any tea? Do you know? Sweet tea, very good. All right, so we pour sweet tea on the Buddha, and this comes from the Japanese word amacha, which is sweet and tea. So it's literally sweet tea. And I don't know, I'm not trying to like call out Reverend Candace or anything, but I don't know what kind of tea it is. Oh, it's Lipton, okay, yeah. No, that's okay. I think we'd use Lipton, and then, yeah, Reverend Patty doesn't like, yeah, just put some sugar in it. So like it sweetens it up. But I was looking into why we put sweet tea. And so the sweet tea in Japan is actually not tea at all, in the sense that it doesn't come from tea leaves, but it comes from a particular strain of hydrangea, like the flowering one, that's local to Japan. And the leaves it has are actually very bitter until they're fermented. And then when they're fermented, it's something like hundreds of times sweeter than sugar. So it's really sweet. And it's supposed to have these like medicinal qualities, and people use it, and even sort of like magical qualities in the history of Japan. And so that was why they use it, was this kind of magical property of tea. And it comes from the story of the baby Buddha, where there's a lot of different versions of it. So depending on what version you're reading, it's either raining sweet tea or this like purified water or some kind of liquid is being poured by either one of the Indian gods, or more locally to Japan, it's either the eight great dragon kings or a 9-headed dragon. So that was interesting to me anyway, because I like dragons. Year of the Dragon this year, right? I'm Year of the Dragon. I guess that kind of guess how old I am. But, oh yeah, Year of the Dragon too? Oh, very good. You must be 12 then. No, yeah. Almost 12, all right. So the 8 dragon kings aren't actually dragons. So I was like, yeah, that's not exciting. So the 9-headed dragon, it has also different stories depending on where you listen to in Japan. But there's one that apparently in the city of Hakone, which I don't know if anyone's been to Japan, it's kind of, it's outside of Tokyo, and they're known for their hot springs. We stay there, it's a very nice town. But there's a lake called Lake Ashi. And supposedly, a long time ago, there was a dragon that was terrorizing this town, and it would go on rampages, it would cause floods, and it would steal, I guess, daughters for some reason, which I guess is a universal thing for dragons. So the dragon would cause this rampage, and the village elders came together and they said, okay, to minimize the losses, every year we're just going to sacrifice one of the daughters, and then it'll appease this dragon. So every year they would send one of the daughters out, and she would go to the lake and go down the bottom, and then the dragon, I guess, would be happy, and it wouldn't try to start anything terrible. Now, there was a monk that heard about this. So this monk's name was Mangan, which I guess also can be read like Manmaki, but the first character is for like 10,000, and the second character is for Maki, like Makizushi, but it also refers to like the scroll. Do we have scrolls up here? Maybe no. All right. Oh, yeah? Oh, yeah, the scrolls. So like the scrolls over there, that up in the front. So the sutras are also referred to by this character. So when he became a minister, he read 10,000 volumes of these scrolls. So that's why he was called Mangan. Anyway, he hears about this terrible story, and he's like, I can't stand for that. That's awful that they have to do this to appease this dragon. I'm going to go over there. So the monk goes over there and then sets up kind of this shop there. He makes like a staircase out of stone and creates an altar, and then he starts chanting. And so he chants for like many days, and on the final day of his chanting, his voice is like reaching the other side of the lake, it's starting to stir the waters, and then finally the dragon comes out, but instead of attacking the monk, he goes over and he lowers his head, and he says, I'm so sorry, I'll never do anything bad again. And so this monk, it doesn't immediately like forgive him. I guess he gets like an iron chain and chains him to the bottom of the lake. But then he says, okay, now I forgive you. Except now, instead of not just harming, you're actually going to protect and make sure that the people here are okay. So you have this responsibility now as a kami-sama, as like this god of this lake, that you're going to protect these people. And so I guess they have a festival every year where they go and they get these boxes of red rice and they throw it into the lake. And it comes down to the bottom, and supposedly none of them have ever come up, and so that shows that the dragon's still happy because he's eating the rice. Anyway, but I wanted to tell the story, one, because it was interesting to me, but two, also because it shows this difference, I think, in Western culture where we have dragons, and oftentimes when you hear of a dragon and they kidnap a princess or something, then a knight goes, right, and they fight the dragon, they slay the dragon, and then they rescue the princess, and then everything is happily ever after, right? But from this Buddhist and more Eastern perspective, instead of going and fighting the dragon, this monk goes over and preaches the Dharma. He teaches the Dharma there and where the dragon is causing all this trouble, and ends up actually making, I don't know necessarily a friend, but at least like an ally for him, someone who converts to Buddhism and is then very friendly and nice to the people in the area. So I think it's a lesson for us, and this different lesson that we often get from maybe other, stories or movies and stuff, but to say that if there's some kind of maybe conflict or someone you're upset with, I'm not saying that you should like chant the sutras at them. I'm also saying like you shouldn't not do that, because I don't know, maybe it'll work. But instead, to meet them with compassion. So there's this one line from the story that I was reading, was interesting, where it's like the dragon was no match for the fiery, compassionate heart of the Buddha Dharma. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Thinking of like the compassion of the Buddha being like fiery. But anyway, so this idea that compassion can be very strong, it can be very powerful, and when we are compassionate people, it rubs off on other people. It shows and it helps to maybe make them not so hard, or even more, show their true selves. And in doing so, we can create this relationship that, like the dragon and the monk, can last for a very long time, that you can take care of each other, take care of the people around you. And that is the power of the Buddha Dharma. So instead of always jumping to fight, which I know is very easy, it's kind of like our natural response. To try to respond in compassion can lead to better outcomes. If we join me in Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
Thank you, Reverend Hamasaki, for your wonderful message. Please stand if you are able to recite our pledge, followed by Nembutsu. This can be found in the back of your book, service book.
Our pledge. Breaking out of my shell, I will share a warm smile and speak gentle words, just like the kind Buddha. Not becoming lost in my greed, anger, and ignorance, I shall think and act with an open mind, just like the calm and peaceful Buddha. Not putting myself first, I will share in the joy and sadness of others, just like the compassionate Buddha. Realizing the gift of life I have received, I shall strive to live each day to its fullest, like the Buddha who tirelessly works to liberate all. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda
Butsu. Okay, the announcements for April 14th, 2024. 2024 Temple Scholarship applications are now available for graduating seniors and college students associated with our temple. The doll making class has been rescheduled for April the 20th at 9 a.m. The Stockton JACL Day of Remembrance is at 1 p.m. on April the 20th at the Delta College Don Malbon Forum. Doors open at 12:30. Donations of bazaar raffle gifts and bingo gifts and silent auction are being requested and accepted at in the office. Please drop them off during regular office hours. Reverend Shibata's book club will meet on April the 24th at 6:30. If you are interested in participating, please contact Reverend Shibata. Sangha Club is continuing collection of aluminum cans and recyclable plastic bottles. Donations may be left by the white bin under the carport area. Help keep recyclable bottles and cans out of our landfill while supporting one of your youth organizations. Are there any other announcements, Mike?
Reminder that Taiko classes meets on Mondays at 5:30 p.m. On Friday, the Adult Buddhist Association will have their monthly lunch and meeting from 11:30. As mentioned before, Saturday is the Stockton JCL Day of Remembrance. There's a few flyers in the lobby. This is regarding when people of Japanese ancestry were relocated to camps. People in Stockton had to first assemble at the county fairgrounds. And we're trying to have the last remaining building become a museum and park. Next Sunday, Taika will finish teaching the students John Kempo. This is to honor Reverend Dave Matsumoto, who will be retiring in June. Next Sunday, there's also a teachers' meeting at 11:30. And 2 Sundays from now, there is no Dharma School service due to the Federation of Dharma School Teachers League Conference in Mountain View. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. This will now conclude the first portion of our service. We would like to thank everyone for your attendance and Reverend Hamasaki for his Dharma message. At this time, Dharma School students up to 6th grade are dismissed to their classes. Please come forward to offer tea if you have not done already. Reverend Hamasaki will deliver the adult Dharma message. And thank you.
I'm gonna wait and let Yoma hear you, Dan. I'm just gonna go down really quickly. Okay, hello again, everybody. And because I did introduction already, you have heard about Sensei's introduction to the Dharma and, of course, his career. So I'm pleased that he's able to give us the adult Dharma message now. Thank you, Sensei.
All right, good morning again. Does everyone want to hear the story of the baby Buddha? Yeah? Okay. Should we go, how far back, like all the way to the beginning? All the way to the beginning, all right. So in India, There was a king and a queen, so King Suddhodana and Queen Maya, and they were trying very hard to have a kid. And they went to some soothsayers, and they said, like, oh yeah, you have to wait till you have this kind of like sign. So there was a sign where the queen had a dream about a white elephant with 7 tusks? Seven? I think it was 6. Anyway, it circled Queen Maya 3 times, then entered into her womb. And so they went back to the soothsayers, and they were like, oh yeah, what does this dream mean? And they were like, sure enough, it means that you are going to have a child. And they had these different people come over to see what kind of child they had. Oh, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so she has this dream, she's pregnant, and the custom of the people at the time was that when you're going to give birth, you go back to the village of your family. So the wife would move in with the husband, except for when they give birth, they go back so that they're comfortable, they're with their parents. So they go back to where Queen Maya was from. And on the way there, they end up stopping because Queen Maya goes into labor. And this place is Lumbini's garden, where we were able to sing the song earlier. And let's see, they get out, they go to Lumbini's garden. She has the child, which he, I guess, comes out of her side, then walks 7 steps, and then, depending on the sutra that you're reading, he either says, I am foremost in the world, I am eldest in the world, I am the greatest in the world, there will be no other births after this one. Or he says, he points up and he points down and he says, in heaven above and the world, the earth below, I alone am the honored one. So I think that's the one we have, right? The disco Buddha. After that, I think shortly after, Queen Maya passes away, right? And then they have these people come look at the Buddha for the naming, and they say either he's going to be a great king or he's going to be a great religious teacher, and it depends on whether or not he sees any suffering while he's in his formative years. So then we get into the whole story of the Buddha and stuff. But that was the story of the birth of the Buddha. So we call it Hanamatsuri, or the flower festival, because when he was born, I guess spontaneously all the flowers bloomed even though they were in season. Then there was a sweet rain, as I mentioned earlier, and then all the steps that he took, there was like a lotus that came from each step. So that was the birth of the Buddha. Is that okay? Yeah? Okay. Any questions? No? All right. There's not that many people, so if you have a question, you can, or if you have like a comment, or just want to let me know. All right. So that was the birth of the Buddha. Excuse me. Obviously, this was not something that actually happened, right? Babies can't just do that, right? It was probably some sort of primitive C-section or something, and that's why Queen Maya passed away afterwards. However, whenever we hear one of these stories within Buddhism, it's never the right question to ask, did this happen or not, but rather, why, right? Why are we learning this? Why did they include this? What are they trying to tell us from this story? And so there's always a lesson in all of the Buddha stories, and that's really the more relevant question, rather than, did this actually happen? And this is something I'm going to revisit later in this talk. But so from what happened with the Buddha, the reason why he took 7 steps, as far as I understand it, is because within the Indian cosmology at the time, there were 6 different realms of existence, and the 7th step was him transcending it. So you might have heard this before, but the 6 realms are the realms of the gods, the realm of the Ashura, which is the fighting gods is translated a lot, the realm of the humans, the realm of the animals, realm of the hungry ghosts, and then the hell realm. And so those are the 6 realms, and then showing that, again, that extra step, that he transcends all of these different realms, and therefore will no longer be back into a samsaric existence, into an existence of birth and death, being repeatedly reborn. Any questions on that? No? All right. It's more fun if you talk to me. And then he points up and he points down and he says that I alone am the world-honored one. And so I was looking into this too, and as to why he had said it, and there's a couple of different reasons. So with Buddhism, again, it's really interesting that a lot of it is up to interpretation. So if you ask like 3 different ministers, you get 3 different answers for certain things, right? The whole reason for like burning incense originally is just to clean the air, right? Back in the day, they didn't have Febreze or air filters or anything, and so they had to clear the air somehow. They used incense. But now it's part of our rituals, and so people can attribute different meanings to it as sort of a teaching tool, right? So, oh yeah, it represents impermanence because it burns and it's gone, or it represents how when something's gone and then the essence of it kind of sticks on you afterwards. There's different reasons. Has everyone asked like a minister why we burn incense? No? Just do it? Yeah. All right. Okay. All right. So in terms of this I am the world honor one, it can be viewed in different ways. And so one of them is to say, well, depending on which way you look at it from like our human point of view, you're always concerned about yourself. And so if you say, I'm the world honor one, then you have all of this greed and anger and ignorance, and so you're concerned about the self and your selfishness. However, from the side of the Buddha, there is no real I, and it's this existence that is above everything. And so being able to reach that level of understanding within your mind and then attaining nirvana, that is like the ideal. Another way of understanding it, which is a little bit more of like a Zen way of understanding, would be that this child, which says, I am the world honored one, is representative of all of our potential to be Buddha. So Buddha nature is very important within Zen, and so it's this representation of like, oh yeah, all of us can be Buddha. If this child can be Buddha, all of us have that potential within us, and so it's again this representation for all of us to kind of see like, oh, that's also within me, so I should also strive to be Buddha. The one that I thought was most interesting, or at least pertinent, at least to this point in my life, is that it was a reference to the Indian debates, philosophical, religious debates that were happening at the time of the Buddha. So I think we have this sort of notion as people who don't live in India and just Westerners in general, that what was happening in India was pretty uniform, right? We have this idea of countries as being very uniform, right? Whether it's like, oh yeah, if they were under a king, then everybody sees that as the one thing, or they were under Christianity, that was all that one thing. But it was very, very diverse in India, and all the different things that were happening in terms of philosophical debates. There was a lot going on a lot of different issues. So one of them was, is the universe eternal, or is it going to end at some point? Does it recycle? Are there gods? Do they control our lives? Do they just kind of hang out by themselves? Is there a soul? If there is a soul, is it eternal? Does it end up going away at some point? So all of these different things were questions that were happening during the time of the Buddha. And the way that the Buddha addressed them was very interesting in the way that he didn't, he like really didn't. So there's these different questions that were asked of the Buddha that he never answered. And so one of them was something like, oh yeah, is the universe infinite or not? And he doesn't say anything. And then so they like ask him 3 times, and he's like, look, is this going to help you understanding this question? Like, if you know it's eternal, is it going to change your life? And it's like, well, no, not really. So he has this metaphor of, or not a metaphor, this parable of the poison arrow, which, I don't know, anyone familiar with that one? Yes? Okay. Some people? Not others? No? Okay. So imagine you get shot by a poison arrow. And instead of taking the arrow out, you start thinking, I wonder where this poison came from. Was it a frog? Was it a snake? Was it something more rare? I wonder who shot this arrow. Was it a tall guy? Was it even a guy? Was it a woman? Was it a machine? I wonder if the arrows are from like a certain kind of bird, or what kind of tree like the arrow was made out of. When really, yeah, just take the arrow out. Like, that's what you got to do. That's what's important. Which is not good advice. If you ever get stabbed by something, you want to leave it in until you see a medical professional. But for the purposes of this story, because there's poison in it, you got to take it out, suck the poison out. So with this parable, he's saying there's all these different questions that you've been asking about the situation that you're in now, but all of them are not going to prevent you from getting your situation any better. So he doesn't answer any of these questions because of that. And even though that's something that he tried to tell people, a lot of times it's hard for them to understand and then incorporate it into their lives. So it's been said that there's 84,000 paths to the top of the mountain that is Buddhism, meaning that there's a lot of different ways. And so the Buddha had this ability to teach to people in whatever way that they needed to hear it. So a lot of times it will seem like things are conflicting or that it's different or it might not always match up, but that's because the Buddha was always talking to the audience and what they needed to hear at the time. All right, let's see if I can circle back to what I was talking about. So the Buddha, talking about all of these different things that were going on, when he says, as a baby, that I alone am the world honored one, and he's pointing to heaven and he's pointing to earth, he's saying that even though there's this notion that we have deities, that we have gods, that we have demons or these like hell beings, and there's this idea that they are controlling the world around us, that they're controlling our lives, that to the extreme everything is predetermined. All of that is not true. That I alone am the one who is responsible for my suffering. I am the one who is responsible for the outcomes of my actions. I am the one that's responsible for me then bringing myself out of that and achieving the kind of happiness that I want. So that's sort of the lesson from the Buddha talking about in heaven above and earth below, I alone am the world honored one, is this sort of like freeing thing in that all of us have agency in our lives. And he's making a statement in terms of the other things that were going on at the time, the philosophies that were talking about why we shouldn't really be focusing on like our own actions and doing other stuff. So as that relates to Jodo Shinshu Buddhists today, like for us, it's not in our pledge, I don't think, but in the Jodo Shinshu Creed, or at least within what it says about our branch of Buddhism, it talks about how we're not supposed to believe in supernatural things or petitionary prayers, right? Does that sound familiar to anyone? Yeah, a little bit? No? Okay, so as Jodo Shinshu Buddhists, we're not supposed to believe in supernatural things or in petitionary prayers. And what that means, essentially, is that you're not supposed to rely on these mystical forces to do things for you, essentially. And also not to like blame them when things don't go right for you. And in doing so, you will be able to live like a happier life. So when you go to the temple like this, you're not supposed to go up to Buddha and be like, Buddha, please let me get a good grade, or let me get a new car, or let me hit the lottery. Like, Buddha's not going to do anything. Which is funny because apparently, a lot of the bachans will go to the casino and then they'll like put the frog on, because the Japanese character, or the reading for frog is kairu, which is also a homonym for kairu, to return. And so you put the money in, so hopefully the money returns. And then they go, namandas, namandas, namandas. I don't know, maybe it works, I guess. But I think it's fine. What was told to me is it's fine if you do that, but just don't be disappointed. If you blame Buddha for it, then that's the wrong attitude. But if you're like, oh, it's okay, and if it comes back, then you can thank Buddha, and if it doesn't come back, then it's your fault. This idea that you're not supposed to ask Buddha for anything, and then also you're not supposed to blame Buddha for anything, and in doing so, you take responsibility for your life, and it allows you to change it for the better. So I don't know if you could tell, but I like telling stories. And so another story that perhaps you may or may not have heard of is there's this farmer that lives a long time ago on a farm, and he ends up, he ends up going out and getting a wild horse. So he gets a wild horse and brings it back to his farm. And so he has this really nosy neighbor, which happens in these stories. So his nosy neighbor sees him. He's like, oh, you got a wild horse. That's really cool. That's nice. And then the farmer says, well, I don't know. We'll see. And the next day, the farmer has his son, who is a young man, tried to break in the horse, and it ends up bucking him off, and he breaks his arm. So he goes, oh, that's not good. So the nosy neighbor comes over and says, hey, that's terrible that your son broke his arm. He says, well, I don't know, we'll see. And the next day, the head of the village, or I guess the fiefdom that they live in, comes through picking up young men to fight in a war that they're going to battle with like the other fiefdom next to them. But they don't end up taking his son because his arm is broken. So nosy neighbor again comes over and is like, oh, that's really good. It's like, well, I don't know. That night there's like a big storm, and it ends up blowing over the fences that keep all of the livestock in. Kind of like the big wind we had here last year. Anyway, so it blows it over, and the horse escapes. The nosy neighbor comes over, he's like, oh, that's terrible. You had this horse, your son went through all this, and now they escaped. He's like, well, we'll see. The next day, the horse comes back, and it brings with him 3 other horses. So it's like, oh, wow, amazing. So this is a story that's supposed to kind of illustrate, like, is something good or is it bad? Like, we don't really know, right? What really matters is our attitude towards it. And this is what the Buddha is always trying to teach us, is that we're always clinging to these ideas of what is supposed to be good or what is supposed to be bad. And because we're clinging to them, that is why we end up suffering. So instead of letting go and just kind of accepting, life as it is and understanding that we should be grateful for it, then we cling to how we want it to be, and we end up hurting ourselves. So to bring it back to this idea of the Indian worldview and the now for all of us, when we see the world, we don't really know what is true, if that makes sense. I'll get really philosophical here. But this world that we see is a world completely made up in our minds. And I mean that in the sense that, like, if you ask somebody else what they see or how they feel about something, it's going to be different, right? So we each have sort of this world that we live. We have this lens, depending on our circumstances, where we're from, we see things as different things. There is a physical world that exists, right? But all of us interact with it, and then we create this world in our minds. So depending on whatever the world it is that you create, right? Whether if there is deities in it, there's like a thunder god and a wind god. If it's, Totoro going through and that's what creates the wind. Whatever it is, it doesn't necessarily matter if it's, if you think it's true or not, or what it is, or what someone else believes. But it's when we cling to the things in the world and we want them to be a certain way, that's where our suffering comes from. And that's what the Buddha was trying to tell us, that ultimately it doesn't matter what your worldview is. When you start clinging to it, that's where the suffering comes into. All right, so that was a lot. Any questions there? No? Am I going too fast? No? Okay. All right. So, I don't know. Where am I on time? Is that about right? Is the food ready? Good? A little bit more? A little bit less? No? A little bit more? Okay, all right. Yeah. So to kind of bring it full circle, so we're here as Jodo Shinshu Buddhists, and now we have this understanding of we're not supposed to be clinging to this worldview that we have. We're supposed to let go of the things that we think are going to make us happy. But as we're taught by our teacher, Shinan Shonin, up until the point that we die, we are imperfect human beings. Never are we going to be able to let go of things fully, just like the Buddha was trying to teach us to do. So what is it that we can do in our lives? And our main focus is Amida Buddha, right? So this is the one time that we bring out the actual Shakyamuni Buddha, and for the rest of the time we're looking at Amida Buddha, which is not a person that ever existed, but rather this representation of infinite wisdom and compassion, this thing that sustains us all the time from around us. And so, at least as my understanding, in sort of the psychological way of looking at it, the way that we let go or we release the things that we cling to is to forget the self. And the best method within Jodo Shinshu is saying the Nembutsu of forgetting the self is to focus on something else. And so that's where we hear the language of like other power, of the Pure Land, something that is outside of ourselves. And it's not to say that we have to stop doing stuff, right? But rather that instead of focusing so much on our self-centeredness, if we have a life that's centered around the Buddha, it will bring us less suffering. It will bring us that happiness. So instead of worrying about ourselves all the time, and is this right for me? Think about like, oh, the Buddha? And is this right for the Buddha? Am I grateful for what is given to me? Am I grateful for the people who have raised me, who have sustained me, who continue to be around me? And if we have that shift in our thinking, then that's when we start to let go of certain things. It's easier to let go. I can't speak too much, I don't know, about myself. I'm still pretty imperfect. But if you see other people and they seem to understand it or have that change in the shift in mind, then you can really understand where it's like water rolling off their back. When you see people who really, it's hard to get them upset. They're very kind no matter what happens to them. And these are the kind of people that are role models for myself, and I think really exemplify this Jodo Shinshu teaching of if you let go of yourself, if you put that behind and you focus on how much you have to be grateful, on all the people who are working so hard for you, of all the people who you care and love, then naturally you start to let go of the things that have been worrying you, have been causing you this suffering, and in doing so you have this happier and more meaningful life. Is that good? All right. We'll close with Gasho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
Okay, thank you, Sensei, for your message. And of course, as we celebrate Hanamatsuri and just this nice connection on how Hanamatsuri that happened over 2,500 years ago, and how does it connect to our lives today? So thank you for that insight for even just thinking about my own life and maybe some of my own maybe stressors or anxieties that I have, and understanding and being reminded that I'm sustained by so many different people, and so it's nice to know that I have that support. So thank you for joining us today, and thank you so much for your family for attending as well. And thank you, everybody, for coming today. And please stay for the luncheon and, of course, the Hanamatsuri program from the Dharma School students that they're excited to share with you. And so we can conclude, of course, by saying the Nembutsu together, but prior to leaving for the gym, please come forward and offer sweet tea. And then, of course, you can say hello to Reverend Hamasaki as well. Okay? So please join me in Gasho to conclude. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Okay, thank you, everybody.
to the best.